What was history's biggest scam? There was a scammer who sold the Eiffel Tower. Twice. He failed the second time and had to flee to the US, but he did sell it. Once. The reason he sold it was because back then the Eiffel Tower wasn't the icon it is now. There were a lot of people that wanted to tear it down because it was considered an eyesore. Its future was very much unknown. So it wasn't like Victor was selling a historic piece of Parisian history. Victor was conning scrap dealers to sell the rights to metal. It's still an amazing con job, but some people picture it like he sold the equivalent to the Statue of Liberty or the Lincoln Monument, and that's not quite the case. Public funded stadiums. Dealing with that right now in Vegas. Taxpayers are providing 50% of the $1.5 billion Raiders Stadium under construction right now. The school district is lost in the country, teachers often working for free and massive overcrowding, but apparently there's an extra $750 million to help the struggling NFL. Those athletic silicone bracelets a couple years ago that said they improved your balance or whatever. I remember a guy I went to school with who did a research project effectively exposing the bracelets as fraudulent, and was actually offered money by the bracelet company to not present his findings when it was selected for an inter-school science competition. Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme, the largest Ponzi scheme in world history, and the largest financial fraud in US history. How has nobody held him in prison yet? I was sure it would happen in less than a month. He's in white collar prison. Supposedly he's having fun in prison and is quite happy. The Brex mining scandal. A Canadian mining company claimed that they had found 200 million troy ounces of gold. That would be worth $257 billion today, in Indonesia in 1993. At their height the company was valued on the Nasdaq stock market at $6.9 billion, adjusted to 2018 with inflation. The geologist who reported the 200 million troy ounces of gold was shaving his wedding ring into the drill core samples and making it look like all of the cores had an incredible amount of gold in them. Eventually in 1997, another big mining company that was looking to acquire Brex did some due diligence and found that not only did their drills not detect any gold, but that the gold flecks in Brex's drill samples were angled and sharp, unlike flecks of gold that would be produced naturally. They concluded Brex was salting their samples. Company got exposed as a fraud. The geologist who shaved his ring and made hundreds of millions off of selling stock reportedly committed suicide after he was found out. His reported method of suicide was jumping out of an Indonesian military helicopter and magically his hands, feet, and pen 15 were surgically removed and the body was unrecognizable. Yeah, this guy definitely didn't pay off the Indonesian military to fake his own death. Lawsuits hit the company that went bankrupt almost overnight. The CEO fled to the Bahamas, had his house broken into by masked gunmen who threatened to shoot him unless he turned over the money he owed them. He apparently died of a brain aneurysm 3 weeks after the break-in. There is a movie about it that came out in 2016 with Matthew McConaughey, and now we have a lot more regulations and requirements for mining companies in Canada that want to be listed on stock exchanges and go public. Piggy Land. It's not the biggest scam but my favorite. In Toronto in the 40-50s, a guy, I can't remember his name, came up with a great investment idea. He would sell people piglets but also charge extra, up front, for their food, care etc. He would take care of their pig on his farm, and when it was full grown, the investor would sell it for a nice profit. He sold thousands of piglets. People would even bring their kids up to the farm on the weekends to visit, and the parents would be happy to see their investments growing. They weren't allowed in the barn, but he had a nice meeting room set up where they could play with their pig. Then one day the owner took off to Germany with millions of investors' dollars and was never heard from again. It turns out he only had a dozen or so pigs in different sizes. When people came to visit, they all saw the same few pigs. The Spanish prisoner. It started in the late 19th century as a scam where a con man would convince someone that he had a friend locked up in a Spanish prison, who knew the location of some buried treasure, or something similar. But to organize a jailbreak, bribe the guards, they needed some cash now, then they could all go share the treasure together. Sound familiar? because it's the ancestor of other forms of advanced fee fraud, otherwise known as Nigerian email scams, 419 scams, etc. The Rothschild family had a series of messenger pigeons set up across Europe. When Napoleon's army fell at the Battle of Waterloo, they heard the news first, then spread a rumor in London that Napoleon was victorious, causing many people to fear an economic collapse and sell all their holdings and shares. They then bought up everything they could at a fraction of its value before the real news could reach the city. Edit: I don't remember my source. Just remember reading that. Doesn't seem too far-fetched considering scams bankers pull off to this day. But there is also plenty of reason to believe this story could have been spread as anti-Semitic propaganda. I hold no strong opinion about this topic. The story just came to mind when I read the question from OP. Not sure if this counts, but it's pretty interesting. In ancient Rome, the fire service was private, so to speak, and the main company putting out fires would only do so if they bought the house from the owner at a pittance of what it's worth. Obviously many would do that or else become homeless, and the owner of the firefighting company became a very rich man. However, there were lots of rumors of buildings of interest to the company being set on fire on purpose, or indeed if it was a slow month business-wise, just start a fire. There was an architect in Texas who was given money to build a skyscraper. When he showed the blueprints to the investors, everyone signed off on it, but they made it in inches, not feet, so he built a really small building and kept the difference of the costs. The investors sued him, but the judge said it was perfectly legal because he built what he showed them, and it wasn't his fault they didn't bother looking closer. It is now called the world's littlest skyscraper. Rick Harrison's pawn shop. Rick be like, so we have confirmed this is an authentic 1400s Tachi owned by the son-of-in-law of Toyotomi Hideyoshi. The blade has been excellently maintained and is very finely forged. The guard is actually taken from an even older sword. This sword was even the personal property of a Japanese officer in 1905 Russo-Japanese War, captured by Russian forces, then captured by your great-grandfather during the American intervention in Arkhangelsk in 1918, and has since been passed on to you. Just the sword itself is priceless, but comparable modern-made swords run easily $30,000. Add in all that history and it could fetch six figures. I'll give you $400 for it. Marcus Licinius Crassus, quite possibly the wealthiest man to have ever lived, got a lot of that wealth through shady means. He lived around 100 BC in Rome and is credited with inventing the first fire brigade. Except this fire brigade didn't work like any today. In ancient Rome there was no fire department. So Crassus would show up to a fire with a lot of slaves he used to put out fires. Then he'd watch your house burn and tell you he'll buy it from you at some crazy low price. It'd go something like this. I know they did not use dollars, just an example. Crassus, wow. Your house is on fire. Tell you what, I'll buy it from you for $1,000. Joe Citizen, what? It's worth $10,000 at least. Crassus, yeah, but it is on fire and it is getting worse. How about $900? Joe Citizen, I can't possibly accept such a low price. I'll have nothing. Crassus, if this fire keeps going you really won't have anything soon enough. Now the offer is $800. Joe Citizen, fine. I'll take $800. Crassus, deal. Fire Brigade, go put that fire out. In time he became the biggest landowner in Rome. Greenland. If I remember correctly they named it Greenland due people would think it was warm and come over despite it being colder than Iceland. That it is the average person that is at fault for the state of the environment. Don't get me wrong, the public at large has of course played a role. But we are nothing compared to corporations. You biking to work is great but it means nothing while giant ships are belching some of the nastiest kinds of greenhouse gases out completely unregulated. And recycling is great but we are still destroying all of the world's carbon sinks at an unprecedented rate. And that is the tip of the melting iceberg. Followed closely by the US. Politicians convincing large swaths of the public that the wealthy should be taxed less than the middle class. That one is a doozy. Some dudes bought a diamond necklace through a prostitute impersonating Marie Antoinette. The necklace was valued to some $20 million in the 18th century, and it the good old give us the necklace first and we pay you later. Which they obviously didn't and instead fled the country, and the jewelers, some of the most well known in all of France at the time, went bankrupt. Edit, minor spelling error. The donation of Constantine was a Roman decree that gave the papacy authority over Antioch, Alexandria, Constantinople, Jerusalem, and the rest of the Western Roman Empire, that includes England, Italy, North Africa, and Iberia. This implied that the Holy See could appoint secular rulers in these areas. It was invoked by the Pope numerous times to assert political authority over this area, leading to endless conflict between the papacy, the Holy Roman Empire, and other European powers. Spoiler, the document was a forgery lol. Scottish soldier Gregor McGregor claimed he was made the leader of a country in Latin America which did not exist, and then proceeded to earn himself a fortune by selling land and government bonds of said fictitious country to wealthy British and French investors. People got on ships and sailed there looking for land that didn't exist. There was a tribe that was like, no, there's no colony here, white folks. They actually had to be convinced that they had been lied to. Many died. Themistocles won the Battle of Salamis in 480 BC by writing a letter that indicated his forces were fleeing the area and Xerxes' fleet needed only to move into the Straits of Salamis to be victorious. In reality, the information in the letter was false and Themistocles arranged for it to fall into Xerxes' hands. Xerxes took the bait and his forces got mashed in the straits. He wound up withdrawing and the entire tide of the Greco-Persian War shifted, resulting in Greek dominance, and, not incidentally, the continued development of Western culture as we know it. Probably among the most significant tactical decisions in history, simply because of the butterfly effect and the enormous impact Greece had on the world we know today. Laws. We are expected to adhere strictly to the law, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. And yet as a commoner, I can't just look up laws. Building codes are a great example of this. A copy of the local building codes would cost me like $1,600. In this great information age, every single law should be indexed on the internet, and available for any person to read. There should also be a plain text footer at the end of each law that translates any questionable legal language into something that can be understood by the average grade 12 high school student. One comes to mind: the entire island of Manhattan bought for about $1,000 in today's US dollars. The value of a thing is what that thing will bring. It's not a scam to buy something from someone for what they value it for. Europe did a lot of shady shit to the Native Americans, but that wasn't one of them. Manhattan was nothing special when it was acquired. It was made into something special. It's currently happening with the Trump administration. Let me get all conspiracy nut on you. The whole Russia connection has more to do with sanctions and amp oil than anything else. It's not blackmail. There's no PP tape. It's not about real estate ventures. It's just oil. When Obama was in charge, he made sure that Russia would not drill in the Arctic, one thing they are hoping Trump will let them do. The main reason Russia interfered to get Trump elected is so he'd lift those sanctions and allow them to drill. Spoiler alert. He did. The tricky part is that the Arctic territory is difficult to work on, and local oil companies don't have the technology to drill in that type of terrain. So in steps Exxon, a giant US-based oil corporation, skilled in offshore drilling. Profits for us as well as profits for Russia, win-win. And guess who happened to be Secretary of State when Trump lifted those sanctions? Rex Tillerson, former Exxon CEO. This was their master plan all along. Considering Tillerson had set up this deal way back in 2012, before Obama sanctions halted progress. That's really the only reason Russia wanted Trump to win, was to get this oil deal to go through. But now that Putin already got what he wanted, or doesn't need those sanctions lifted anymore cause it kind of fell apart, Trump is off the leash and amp, just doing whatever the hell he wants, just killing time trying to see how much money he can filter to his rich buddies before he gets kicked out. After the Battle of Waterloo happened and the British won, there was a family business who told London, "We lost, before the real news of the actual result could make its way there. The stock market plummeted and they bought pretty much the whole country up. When the actual news came, it was too late and no one, including the government, could afford to buy it all back at the now inflated price. The family business made a series of loans and deals far more complicated than I can understand, but the end result is they became the Bank of England and Britain moved to a central banking system that meant we would as a people be forever in debt. As an interesting side note, part of the US Revolution was to escape this system, which they did successfully right up to the early 1900s when the Federal Reserve was created. Before this, Americans did not have to pay income tax.